Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Layover Live. I'm Jason Swick, VP of Strategy and Insights. Thanks for tuning in once again. Got some friends stopping by to talk about this episode, which will be on paid media, which we'll get to in a second. First, digital strategist Star Gilani. Star, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello, hello. Always good to see you.
Happy
And
to be
in
here.
person, good to see you too.
Yes.
Which is always good too. And a new face that you haven't seen yet, but someone we're certainly happy to have here, digital media manager Chris Gonzales. So Chris, welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Happy to have you here. So these guys are here. We're talking strategy a little bit today. We're talking a little bit of paid media. As it's really important. This landscape's changed so much, as you guys know, is during the pandemic. I feel like the amplification of a DMO's message is one thing that's always changing all the time. The advertising space has changed. Certainly digital transformation coming out of the pandemic. A lot's happened. But first and foremost, I think it goes without saying, got to get the fundamentals down, right? I mean, that's one of the most important things that we have to be thinking about when we're setting things up. So let's talk about fundamentals first, and then we'll kind of get into like the fun stuff, right, a little bit. So what's important from a fundamental standpoint, or maybe as a reminder for DMOs, and maybe Chris, I'll start with you on this side.
Yeah, sounds good. So really taking a clear assessment, of fundamentals for your website, your destination, right, online destination, is taking a clear assessment of what your categories are, right? Looking at all the categories that you have, whether it's event spaces, sporting, leisure, maybe you're a big outdoor draw, like a Sedona, for instance, and really assessing what those categories are and where you stand in market. From there, then you can make a real analytical decision on what you need to do paid advertising for and or work on any of your SEO or any of that to sort of build your traffic on your site.
Yeah, I love that. I think certainly setting goals, and boy, that sounds like a thing that like, hey, Jason, like, yeah, we get that, all right, we get it. But in practice, I think getting laser focused on those goals and keeping in mind when you're running a specific campaign and running paid media, especially against that, because there are hard dollars invested into that, thinking about specifically what that goal is and narrowing it down to one or two things for that campaign, not 20 different things for that campaign. So certainly important. Another important aspect of that, I think, is like getting the right audience, right? Because certain platforms work really good for certain audiences. You have any thoughts on that, Starla?
Well, like, I really think it's so much based on personas now.
Yeah.
Like, you have the golf enthusiast or someone that's really a foodie like me, and that's why I live in Houston. But, Houston itself, too, we really target those individuals that are okay with the hot weather, but know they're going to come really dine in a destination where they're going to get to experience a lot of diversity. So the point being, like, looking at those personas and targeting them and also getting them in the right channels. You're not going to find foodies everywhere, but you will definitely find them in some of those digital aspects.
Yeah, I love you saying that, because the right channel, matching it with the right audience, right? You got to really kind of do some deep digging, do your due diligence, work with your teams to really find out, okay, if I'm looking for this type of person or this persona, where are they spending their time? And there's lots of good tools for that, tools that we use as well for things like that. SparkToro is one that comes to mind, great place to find audiences and things of that nature. But any other thoughts on like choosing the right channel at all?
I think really choosing, a Google and search campaigns really for your channel are going to be your primary, right? People that are doing searches online, they're very intentful at the time of their search. They're sitting down, doing that actual search activity, whether it's leisure again, or where they want to travel, a hotel, maybe a concert, an event. There's usually some sort of draw to get somebody to go somewhere, right? And they're going to do a search in that. Versus paid social, it's impulsive. You may be laying in bed, you may have 5 minutes in between, your break at work.
Sure.
It's a very impulsive platform. So the time period might not be as intentful. So direct for intent, start with your Google, your Bings, your search traffic that you can directly target those search keywords and that intentful audience.
I do feel like you're talking about me when you say paid social and like the person that's just like a quick scan. What am I going to do this weekend? It actually, the Facebook ads got me this morning because a hotel is doing like a rooftop yoga and wine night this Saturday. And I was like, why not? It was $30. Took me like Apple Pay. I was done with my transaction in like 30 seconds. But to your point, that was a very like on the spot, not really intentful thinking. It was just like a why not paid social moment. So using that thought and also being able to like leverage our dollars and always like taking where the money is working. Like search might be great some months, some months paid social might be skyrocketing, and just making sure we're staying flexible in order to get the user to do what we want at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's putting yourself in the end user's shoes and then working backwards. Right? Because to your point, hey, if my intent wasn't there through social, I'm just scrolling through content, I've got to probably have a little bit more buzz factor, a little bit more wow factor to catch that attention because I'm pulling somebody away from doing something. Whereas with intent, with search, someone's already telling you what they want, and then presenting that information upfront and directly is a great way to approach it. All things being equal on that side, certainly, but thinking about that in two different ways is important because certainly search is the number one driver of traffic to a website. If you combine organic and paid, like that is really where DMO should spend their focus. And if you think about it like on a pyramid, that's a big chunk of that should be at that base, filling that up, and then fill up the next bucket, and then fill up the next bucket, and just keep working your way up that way. Those audiences consume media differently. They are looking for things in a different way with different messaging and different types, all important things to think about as we do that, which then kind of brings me in to what I want to talk about next is, and we're kind of hitting on it right now a little bit, is kind of tailoring these tips for DMO. So what are some maybe effective paid advertising things that you guys have seen, or some tips that maybe you could share with this group to help them be more effective with their paid advertising? Either one can start.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take it back as far as a tip. Thinking about your goals even and taking it back a little bit just for a tip is when you are thinking of those goals and that cross media messaging that you're trying to do, remember to tell the same story. Let people live their dream before they decide where to go, right? So tell your same story and have some synergy across platforms. Because you never know if they're going to be doing that intentful search versus laying in bed like Star looking through her social feed, right? And so when you tell that same story, you create a strength in your marketing. And with that goal setting, you're able to drive actions depending on what that category might be that you need to work on. So really that's, going to strengthen your overall plan.
And I think now, especially leveraging AI with the work that we're already doing, like using modeling for information that might be missing and really getting that converter on our website, whether that be just from the dreaming phase when we're on social. Like, what was it, Chris, that we talked about? It's like 59% of the world population is on social media. Like, that's crazy to me.
That is a crazy,
right?
6 out of 10
right?
of the entire world's population, right?
And an average of 145 minutes per day that we're on social media. So when you think about that,
and combining organic and paid efforts there on those platforms as well, I think is very important in order to be effective overall, because I think that's something DMOs have been struggling with, especially with the organic post, trying to get the same type of interaction on each one, knowing that's not always going to be the case, and using those paid efforts to leverage our message, and that dream phase is always going to stay important. AI tip there too.
Another one that really everyone should know is that if you're not doing short form video, you need to be.
Yeah.
Image content doesn't have any motion to it or anything. It's very static, right? By using any sort of short form video, even you're able to tell a story. When people can see and feel and relate with that story, that's how you, again, sell the dream. You sell them into whatever it is, like a certain type of hotel, certain type of destination feature, event. They're able to live that experience for 15 seconds.
Yeah, really, really good point. And boy, short form video has just absolutely exploded. Certainly during the pandemic, I think because consumers became more demanding and more impatient, right? They want that information. That's why you've seen the TikToks of the world explode and do such a good job on that side, which is just crazy. But it is a great resource to get that content and get somebody excited and gets them pulled into your ecosystem. And we were even talking, Chris, you remember before the show, and I've said this many times on the show, that there's probably not a better way to market a destination that I can think of than with video.
For sure.
And then thinking about video one step further is how are they consuming that today? Most are consuming it in a very engaging way through short form video. So I think to your point, I think you're spot on with that. I think thinking about that if you're not doing that, boy, you are really missing the boat. I mean, it's almost to the point where it's becoming table stakes, like searches or like doing SEO. It's like it's not a wow, we should be thinking about doing that. It's like we need to be doing this or we are falling behind. Right? Would you guys agree with that?
Oh,
Yeah,
fully.
definitely. And one of the biggest categories, even outside of the DMO space, is UGC, user generated content. So if you're not creating that video, we even have tools, like CrowdRiff, for you to go and request some of that content and get it to where you're getting that content for free. And you're able to use that across platforms on your website. And then at the same time, it's, sort of like peer review content. We're able to see what our peers think, how they feel at their destination, live their experience.
And I think Proudriff also helps build that bridge between the influencers as well as the DMOs to create that relationship. So there is like a little bit of exchange. There is that like, let's become friends to help our destination together. And it also, I know some influencers are still really focused on static images because that's just easier for them to create.
Sure.
And I know from a DMO perspective, static images will also always be like some part of the marketing plan goal, which is great at the end of the day. I had one DMO do a test recently on all of their assets and images with like their skyline, mountains, water, anything naturesque without people, surprise, surprise, performed the best. Wow. And I was so shocked by that. And we then took their test and actually tested it on social for them. And it ended up winning the same way. So, things do constantly change. The photos with people was so big for so long. And now it's like, give me the picturesque scenes. Like, if I can't get it in a video, show me a good picture of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring up something that we evangelize forever and a day here is the importance of testing. We often talk about testing on landing pages, website, things like that. But you just mentioned, hey, we need to test some of this collateral. We need to test some of this creative and this imagery out for ad use and things of that nature and see what's resonating with our audience. That's as important. That should just be part of your culture and what you're doing at your DMO. Create that culture of testing you're not doing today, and certainly reach out if you have questions or need help with some of those things. We can help with that. So then this brings me to this last category that I want to go over and talk about with you guys, which, we've kind of talked about the fundamentals, super important. We've kind of got into then some effective tips for DMOs very quickly. But now, what are some common challenges that we're seeing, right? And how do you think a DMO can overcome those challenges today? Because we certainly are going to always have challenges. But what are some of the common ones that maybe you guys are seeing that are worth sharing today and overcoming?
Well, something that we see is that DMOs sometimes have been doing the same thing over and over again and then wondering why it's not working. And I think we're all at fault for it because we find it challenging to not necessarily be innovative, but like think differently about our situation. Like travelers might be looking for more budget-like things depending on the economic conditions, but we're serving them this like 5-star spa that costs like $1,000 a night. And I know it's so hard to pivot constantly, but coming up with some of these like campaigns that are not necessarily going to be evergreen, but are short-lived, hit that goal that the user wants, I think is the best way to overcome some of these challenges of just how the world has been. But that's just my 2 cents.
No, an important 2 cents of that. And Chris, I know you're coming in again from another industry, but I gotta imagine that many of the same challenges you're already starting to see over here. Any thoughts on that side?
Yeah, I would say the industry I came from was real estate, right? And there's very down moments in real estate, and I think about like our down moments. Like, what are our down moments, right? We're just ending summer. We're not quite to holiday yet. We're not quite to Thanksgiving. So we're in that like kind of gap within e-com takes a big dip. I've worked in e-com prior also, and there's a good month and a half where people aren't traveling, they're not shopping as much.
Yeah, you're kind of
sort of
shoulder, right?
penny pinching,
yeah.
right? So coming up with those things, like you said, like those short burst campaigns, package deals. When you think package deals, think of how do I get a whole family, right? You're not getting one person at that point. You're now getting 4 people booked. Right? And so think of package deals. How do I get groups of people? Things like that. Exciting more than one. So you're selling, multiple tickets.
Yeah.
Concert package deals. People love to travel together with friends, right? Come up with ways to lift your average dollar amount purchased by coming up with bundles and packages in your downtimes.
And I think, Chris, you talked about this earlier too, just talking about like what are some of those highlights of your destination. Like even in the downtime periods, like maybe you are very cold and you know that people aren't necessarily going to travel to spend a lot of time outdoors, but maybe they'll go skiing if you have snow there. Or how do you take what is good during that time and package it and sell it to someone, I think is that true defining factor here.
Yeah, really, really, really good thoughts there. So hopefully you guys found this, very meaningful. I know I did. I think having these 2 experts in talking about paid media is certainly a great thing because it's always changing and evolving. That is one thing about digital marketing. It's always going to be evolving and changing, but getting those fundamentals right, listening to some of the tips that we talked about and some of the common challenges is, I think, a way for you to be much more effective. So thank you guys for helping out. Thanks for tuning in each and every day. We're available on Spotify and iTunes through audio podcasts as well, so tune in there. We'll see you next time.